You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are beginning Anna Gale Line's third novel in the Jaguar in Peacock series, Lost on Planet M-142. Trapped on the hostile world of planet M-142, Commander Jessa Peacock, Masters of the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, has spent 3 grueling months undercover, investigating a mysterious cult led by the enigmatic blind prophet, Danielle Jabot. Is Jabot a visionary, a fraud, or something far more dangerous? The deeper Jessa digs, the more tangled the web becomes: secrets, deception, and whispers of an impending assassination. When her husband and fellow operative, Nate Masters, finally joins her, their mission takes a deadly turn. Someone wants Danielle Jabot dead, and the list of suspects is as vast as the stars. As Jessa and Nate race against time, they must navigate a treacherous world of fanatic followers, shadowy enemies, and their own rekindled partnership. With every step closer to the truth, one question looms: is Jabot the target, or the mastermind? This is Episode 2, The New Assignment. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
Peak, it is so good to see you again, greeted the balding man on my computer screen, smiling brightly. I've missed you so much. He leaned forward. His face became drawn. His brow knitted. I just don't understand why you felt it necessary to stay on planet M-142 for 3 months to observe Danielle Jabot. I rose my hand to protest. I didn't send the message, General. I was under the impression that I had lost contact with the Liberty for most of the 3 months. I glanced at the picture of Nate, Remy, Reggie, Joey, Colin, and I on my desk. It felt so good to be home. To sleep in my own bed instead of the hard mattress in the cult compound apartments. To garden with Reggie and play racquetball with Remy. To be in Nate's arms, to know that he was just a call away. To eat dinner with the whole family. I frowned. That's why what I have to do is going to be so difficult. If you didn't send the message, who did? Oh, Jabot. A spasm of irritation crossed his lips. I don't think so, I answered, coming back to reality. I looked around to make sure no one was eavesdropping before lowering my voice. I went undercover while I was on planet M-142 as a member of Jabot's cult. She was so impressed with me that I soon became her most trusted advisor, her right-hand woman. Graham's mouth looked as if it were going to drop to the floor. His eyes widened in alarm. I didn't authorize that. She's dangerous. Especially. He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was loud and clear. Especially since you are pregnant. I didn't have a way of passing it by you. I had to fly by the seat of my pants, and you will be glad I did. What makes you think that? He leaned back in his leather chair behind his gray, metal desk, his hands behind his head. I wore a microphone in my glasses and recorded every conversation I had with Danielle Jabot. I also managed to bug her, getting all the conversations she had with others. Did you get anything that we can nail her with? Oh yeah. Murder, brainwashing, theft, and so much more. But you don't think she sent the message? I shook my head. No, because she didn't meet me until after the message had been sent. I rubbed the muscles in the back of my neck. I also don't think she planted the bomb that tore through Starrock's business community. It's just not her style. And you want permission to what? He asked, studying my face intently for a moment. To go down to the planet and find the real person who planted that bomb? Am I right? A smile spread across my face as I laughed. You know me so well. Starrock is not equipped to find the culprit themselves. Have you told Jag about this? Graham questioned, raising his eyebrows. Jag knows I worked undercover as Danielle Jabot's advisor and about the tapes. I don't think Jabot is involved in the bombing. He does. Both of you will have to put your personal feelings aside while you conduct your investigation on the planet. Otherwise, it could put your cover in jeopardy. You are sending both of us, I stammered, kneading the knots in my shoulder harder. But Jada Williams, my cover, isn't married. You'll figure something out. Because if Jag doesn't go, neither do you. Danielle Jabot is dangerous, and I would feel better if you had Nate to watch your back. He looked me over slowly. Is it a go? If that's the only way I am going to get back down to the planet, then it's a go, I retorted, thrusting out my chin defiantly. I glanced over at my family again and then looked back up at General Graham. I couldn't believe that he was insisting that I take Nate. Didn't he realize how long and hard I had worked to get Danny to trust me? Graham leaned back in his chair and touched his fingertips together. He gave me a sidelong glance as he studied me intently. You are hiding something down there. He pressed his eyebrows together, twisting his mouth. What is it? Are you having an affair? 3 months is a long time to be without companionship. He wagged his finger at me. No, he decided, putting his finger to his mouth, you would never do that to Nate. He was taking extreme pleasure in torturing me. He squinted his eyes at me. Maybe you discovered that you don't want to return to your old life. That being Danielle Jabot's right-hand person, living on planet M-142 is where you really long to be. He shook his head and asserted, that's not it either because you still have that incredible twinkle in your eye when you talk about your family and work. He regarded me curiously for a moment before a smile moved across his lips and a light seemed to come on in his eyes. You have done something on the planet that you don't think Jag and I will approve of. Knowing you, as I do, I am sure that it is not illegal or unethical, but unorthodox, nevertheless. He leaned forward, hands under chin. What is it? As he glanced down at his watch, his facial features hardened. On second thought, I don't have time for the explanation. I don't care how you do it, just find out who planted that bomb and why. Take Jag and a shuttle down to the planet. I will expect you both to check in every 2 hours. His face softened. And I am sure that whatever this is, that it isn't as bad as you are making it out to be because you are the best. Just don't make me regret sending you down to the planet by getting hurt or worse. I agreed and ended the transmission. I was about to hit my comlet, the communication device around my wrist, when I noticed Nate standing in the doorway dressed in his standard black flight coveralls. Since being promoted to my first officer a few months ago, he had been wearing his coveralls more. I knew that he felt uncomfortable in them. For the first few weeks, he pulled at his collar so much I thought he was going to wear a hole clear through it. His arms folded across his chest. By the way he pressed his lips together, I could tell that he wanted to be mad at me. Why did Graham tell you not to make him regret sending you down to the planet? And why don't you want me to go? He crossed the room to the window seat, looked out for a moment and then sat. This is my thing. I spent the last 3 months, getting close to Danny Jabot. I have been the one who slept on that hard mattress. I am the one who assisted Danny. And you know, I am not a follower. I am a leader. I looked down at my arms. The cream that Dr. Manning gave me did little to relieve the red, angry blisters, or the itching. I resisted the strong urge to itch the blisters raw. Graham may have let you get away with not telling him what you are hiding down there, but I am your partner and that isn't going to cut it with me, Nate told me, looking me up and down. You have me terrified. Since you came back from the planet, you have been acting distant and preoccupied. I don't know this woman who I have been living with for the last few days. I moved my chair closer to the window seat. I cradled his face with my hands. I am sorry I terrified you, Jag. I really am. I love you. I gazed into his eyes, feeling as if I could almost lose myself in those cappuccino-colored pools. But Danny is a ferocious person. I have watched Danny order her enforcer to kill her top advisors in cold blood over what they served her for breakfast. I turned my face away from him, staring in the direction of the couch at nothing in particular. And if she finds out, I let my voice trail off. If she finds out what, demanded Nate, turning my head to face him. What have you been doing down on that planet? I looked once again into his eyes, taking in a deep breath. Danielle Jabot uses subliminal messages played in the earpieces that all her followers wear. Messages of hatred and murder. Once I figured that out, I programmed her earpiece to play subliminal messages of love, joy, and peace. Nate didn't move for a few seconds. I braced myself for his answer. My stomach clenched in anticipation. Slowly his lips inched upward. "That's what you've been hiding?" He laughed. I glared at him as though he had lost his mind. "That's brilliant. It's not conventional, and it probably violates some IIB rules, but I think that is brilliant, and so would Graham. Let's just hope that Danny hasn't discovered my programming," I answered, standing up. I walked around my desk, to the door, around the couch and coffee table and back to my desk, my hands clasped behind my back. I wouldn't tell this to Nate, but ever since I had been back aboard the Liberty, I felt my confidence plummeting. Small decisions tripped me up, such as what direction to tell the navigator to turn. Something was wrong with me. After several sleepless nights, I concluded that the answer must be on the planet. Compensating, I stopped in front of Nate, smoothing out my own black flight coveralls. Not that I can't handle her. She knows better than to mess with me. I just don't want any more people to die at her hands. The words didn't sound true, even to me. He scrutinized me for a moment, burrowing through me. I was sure that Nate noticed it and would call me on it. Instead, jumping to his feet, he declared, "Then let's go." He dashed to the door before realizing I still hadn't moved. He looked over his shoulder at me. "I'll ask Joey to look after the kids while we are gone. And you settle the command issues and pack. We'll meet in Hangar Bay Alpha Inn, say," he insisted, peering at his watch. "A half hour?" I nodded slowly as we left my office. We headed our separate ways at the travel tram, rushing to attend to the little details before we left. "Morning, Mason. Is Danny in?" I waltzed up to the reception area of Jabot compound headquarters, smiling at the red-haired, lanky man who sat behind it with a phone glued to his ear. Not looking up, he replied in a snotty tone, "I am sorry. Danny, Ms. Jabot, is not receiving visitors today. She is mourning the loss of a dear friend and advisor." Raising his head to meet my eyes, he dropped the phone onto his desk. His eyes grew to the size of cantaloupes, the color drained from his face, leaving it a starch white. "Jada," he screamed, rushing around the desk to take a closer look. He touched my shoulders, inspecting me from head to toe. "It's really you, isn't it?" I could feel the heat of Nate's eyes on the back of my head. "Mason," I prompted, giving him a sidelong glance, "you act like you've seen a ghost. We looked for you for days after the bombing." "Mason, what is all that racket out there?" "I told you I wanted quiet," a tall, long, dark-haired woman yelled as she walked out of her office in the back of the reception area. She extended a cane, putting it down in front of her. Moving around the reception area, she stood next to Mason. She demanded, "What is going on here?" "Danny," I interjected, darting my eyes from her to Nate and back again, "don't blame him. It's my fault." "Jada? Is that really you?" she solicited as she maneuvered around Mason, reaching up to touch my face. She moved her hands, skillfully over it. As if not quite sure, her fingers progressed down my neck to feel my scar and exclaimed, "It is you." She threw her arms around me, pressing me against her. After a few seconds, she freed me and persisted, "Where have you been?" "I have been in Blue Grove visiting my late husband's family," I declared in a sweet voice that dripped like syrup on pancakes. "I am sorry that I made you worry. I tried to get word to you," I elaborated, glancing over at Nate, but the communication lines were down. Danny turned her head from one direction to another, as if she were searching for something. Every so often she would sniff the air. "Mason wears a beach-smelling cologne. Jada, you wear just soap." "But," she contended, turning her head in Nate's direction, "I am detecting a woodsy, pine smell." "Who's there?" "Danny, Mason, this is my late husband's brother and my friend, Daniel, Nate Williams." I closed the gap between Nate and me, slipping my arm around his waist. I maintained, "We are extremely close. Maybe you can settle an argument Jada and I have been having, Ms. Jabot," Nate began, drawing me closer to him. I want to join your group. I hate the non-environmentalist and would be thrilled to be a part of a group that holds the same belief I do. He glanced adoringly at me and continued, but Jada doesn't think it's a good idea. I think she wants this group all to herself. She inclined her head in my direction and pressed, Jada, how long have you known Nate? 14 years, I answered, smiling over at him. We were partners on the Blue Grove police force, I asserted, moving my eyes from Danny to Mason and back again, way before I married his brother. And, Jada, Danny grilled, knitting her brow, has he always been trustworthy, honest and hardworking? I replied, surveying Mason and Danny's face again, yes, yes and yes. Jada, Danny bid, what is the real reason you don't want him to join our group? Because while I was in Blue Grove, Nate and I realized that we have feelings for each other. That might make the situation a little awkward, I admitted, then gazed back at Nate, who raised his eyebrows. I queried, don't you think it might present a problem? With anyone else, yes. But I know my Jada won't let it interfere with her duty to me and this group. In fact, Danny announced, hopping on the counter and dangling her feet off the edge, I want you to be Nate's mentor. He's going to be your shadow every waking moment. Mason cleared his throat. When I turned to look at him, he said, we have real problems. Amos is accusing us of planting the bomb. That's a perfect job for Nate and I to handle, I responded in a low voice. As I said, Nate and I used to be partners, I expanded, giving the room an all-encompassing wave, on the Blue Grove police force. Until I became disgusted with the system. I wrinkled my nose for effect. Jada is right. Together we possess the detective skills necessary to find out who really planted the bomb, thus clearing our names, added Nate. Danny mulled it over in her head, twisting her mouth. She rubbed her chin with her hand and decided, yeah, I think that is a good idea. She jumped off the counter. That will be your primary assignments until this mess is cleared up. You have us all at your disposal. If you need anything, just ask. Anything we have is yours, Danny concluded, maneuvering her way back to her office. Before going in, she called over her shoulder, Mason, hold all my calls. That went better than expected, don't you think? Nate inquired, moving his arm to my shoulder and leading me out the door. Yes, I muttered. It went just great.